Hello and welcome back to the Electrify Expo Podcast. This is episode 106. I'm Matt Teskey again here with Joe Boris, and today we've got a variety of topics kind of across the spectrum of e-mobility. We're talking about the AC Cobra. Just some other cool things happening in the realm of just what is clean fuel. So I guess, Joe, where do you want to start?
We've kind of made it a tradition over the last couple of weeks that we start by talking about Nikola.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to start there. So last week we talked a little bit about these guys. As you well know, they are building a hydrogen fuel cell over-the-road semi-truck or a battery semi-truck, depending on who they're having the conversation with. And they are now offering a pickup truck. And this is a pickup truck that is a much more conventional offering than what Tesla has with the Cybertruck. Last week we talked about how they are essentially selling pre-orders for $5,000, which gets you an invitation to the Nikola World event where you get to hang out with other like-minded people.
I guess that's, yeah, honestly, even the Nikola World thing seems kind of Walt Disney-esque. You know, it's like, we're calling this thing Nikola World. Like, Tony Stark's going to come jumping out and say, it was me the whole time. There's a lot of designed buzz. And every time something new comes out about it, I'm still a little bit just, again, healthy skepticism of where's this going? I don't fault what they're saying about the Badger and how what they presented as a rendering looks more like a traditional truck that might attract more people to make the leap. But at the same time, I don't have the same confidence in it, I guess, namely because they've been fuel cell for so long, and now they're really hyping up the fact that they're putting battery electric on the road too. I don't see how it's jiving.
To be fair, most of the big players in battery electric, which I would call Panasonic through Tesla and Toyota, and obviously Tesla's, the huge 800-pound gorilla in this space, both of those companies have essentially put out their patents for free. So if you were a company who recently had a $22 billion IPO, it's not like you couldn't put something like this together, right?
They brought up the idea of doing the Badger before the IPO. I mean, so it's like the IPO made their claim possible.
I mean, I think that's always what you have with an IPO, right? Like if you give us this money, if you invest in us, this is the kind of stuff we're going to produce. And you go, man, that's awesome. I want to see that kind of stuff produced. I don't know. I really take more. I don't take issue with their ability to deliver this thing. What I take issue with is the fact that they called one of these things the Honey Badger.
Yeah, which Curtis, our producer, said, what is it, 2012? What?
2012?
Yeah, that one,
It's like there's an episode of How I Met Your Mother where they go back in time to 2005 and everybody's got the goatee.
Yeah. I guess it's not far enough back that it actually could be like kind of fun, nostalgic. It's still so recent that it's kind of like, oh, don't do that.
I wonder if it's just like an age thing. Like you get to a certain age where 2012 doesn't seem like that long ago.
I don't know.
Anyway, the Honey Badger, you pay your $5,000, you get on a list. So the Honey Edition Badger, the last I read, it was sold out. I couldn't find the article again.
Honey Edition? I mean, is it even like on the Nikola website where it's like, order your Badger today, click on the Honey Badger? I mean, like, honestly, is this truly a thing? And I'd love to see the internet take over and be like, oh yeah, it was a thing, man. And just have like some rendering of like a Honey Badger hanging out of the Badger's window, driving, I don't know.
Yes. That's coming. And then, the worst part is like, I don't want to type Honey Badger into my search engine because I don't want those ads,
Yep. I'm still convinced that we're actually living in the plot of Back to the Future 2 and no one's actually like admitted it to themselves yet, right? Like when exactly did the almanac get handed off to somebody like at some point prior to 2016 that led to like all pure chaos going on right now, including the Honey Badger coming out as an actual thing you can buy?
The reason I found Back to the Future movies totally unrelatable is because they had a DeLorean that would reliably start.
Oh, well, on the first one, he had to like throw his face into the steering wheel to get that thing to go. So I thought that was
that seemed more realistic. Like it would take them a long time to get to 88 miles an hour.
Yeah, that six-cylinder is not going to get you there that fast, my friend.
I mean, but that was like the biggest heartbreak of all of those great-looking 80s cars. I mean, if you look at the Wraith, if you look at like, even Kit, like as cool as Kit was as a Pontiac GTA, right? And then you talk about, the DeLorean. All those cars had such a great kind of electronic sort of look to them, and they were so slow and so terrible. And that's the excitement, really. And I think that's honestly the promise of Tesla is like they're giving us a product that has that kind of 80s Electrotron vibe, but A, it works, and B, it rips.
If the Badger comes out and it does what it says, what they're saying it can do. That being said, Nikola, as we were discussing,
I think the less we discuss them, the better, because honestly, they're suing a lot of people who have a lot more money than us. Maybe we just leave them alone.
I want to see him succeed, but I just want to see why. I mean, less PR, more real world stuff.
At this point, they have so much money, though, they can pretty much build whatever they want.
Well, if you can have $1 bajillion, but if you don't have a good strategy plan and know how to execute it, it's just going to be money set on fire. I mean, that's what happened to Faraday Future. I mean, they had billions backing them, and where are they now?
I hear you. I don't know, man. I just feel like, I hate to say it, I feel like the Badger hits all the right chords, man. It's conventional looking enough. It's radical looking enough. It's got the right name. I mean, Badger is a cool name, right?
If you're a Wisconsin fan, you probably really want to buy one. I mean, my God.
Man, I wish I got that reference. I don't get it.
Oh, well, for those listening, this is where sports fall off the radar for Joe.
Sports?
I love sports ball.
Yeah, you mean games, son. The only 3 sports are bullfighting, boxing, and auto racing. That's from Ernest Hemingway, so take it up with him. Yeah, I just think, I don't know. I think it's a product of the moment. Pickup trucks, especially full-size trucks as family sedans, are the hot product right now. They're kind of driving what's left of the auto economy. Nikola has that, and I think they have it in a way that is more visually acceptable than Tesla's. Because if you look at Tesla's Cybertruck and their semi-truck, it's a big ask, right? It's a big ask to look at that and say, yeah, that's a truck that I recognize. That's a thing that I recognize. I mean, it has that center seating, which is cool and Formula One-like, but it's different. And you have these guys that have been in the trucking industry for 20, 30, 40 years. It's less of an ask to say, hey, it's just like your truck, but you fuel up at the hydrogen station instead of being an electric. And it's not all weird. You're not sitting in a weird spot. You're not in the middle. I don't know. I think they have the right product. I think they got the right marketing. And now that they actually have a budget, if they have the right leadership, they certainly have the budget to succeed. So
yeah, honestly, that to me, it's that last part you just mentioned is okay with the ideas they've discussed and what they have proven out with prototyping. Now it's time to execute. So that's the next. I mean, honestly, the next 18 to 24 months for them is to me the telltale sign of what their success is going to be. Nikola, they still have the opportunity to prove. Rivian, we haven't even talked about the fact the R1S and the R1T vehicles.
Yeah, we don't talk a lot about Rivian, and I don't know why that is, because they have a real solid product. They have a real solid vehicle.
Yeah.
And they just put out a video. They're testing this thing in the desert, and it's doing awesome stuff. Have you seen the tank turn that it does?
Oh my God, the R1T is going to kick it. And they just raised another $2.5 billion. And again, they're not going from the IPO perspective. They're looking at it who's going to back us from a funding perspective. Who are the believers? And there have been some people that have invested in Tesla that have come out and been very, very blunt against their belief in Nikola. Whereas Rivian is still more in that ballpark of people saying this feels more like a believable product approach that we've seen be successful now with Tesla.
And it's got that vibe. It kind of has that same kind of styling look as either an old Land Rover, what do you call it, the International Scout.
Oh, dude, I got hit by an International Scout. First car wreck I ever had in my life.
Nice.
Yeah, that thing was a legit tank.
But it looked good, right? I mean, while it was killing you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but I think the look they did go for, the aesthetic, the only thing people have ever been kind of hemming and hawing about with Rivian is the front headlight design, but it's iconic. You'll know it when you see it.
You'll know it when you see it.
Yeah, in the same way, that's what the Cybertruck is. The Badger, unfortunately, because it feels more like a safer, normalized design.
Yeah, it could be a Kia, it could be a Ford, it could be anything, but I feel like that's okay.
So the Honey Badger is now the Camry XLE, essentially, is what we're saying.
Every time you say Honey Badger, I know they're gonna drop the ball.
I didn't do it.
2. Section 2. I want to go with the Cobra. So we're talking about all these, we've made some comments about the International Scout. We've made some comments about the old Land Rover Defenders. We're talking about cars from the 60s and 70s, which is before our time. So this one is interesting. This is the Shelby Cobra. If you remember the original AC Cobra, Shelby Cobra, depending on what side of the pond you're on, that was a little tiny British roadster, 4-cylinder, and a chicken farmer from Texas stuffed the biggest Ford truck motor he could into it and created a sports car legend that has endured for 70 years. The new Go Fast Mustangs are still called Cobra because of how badass this car was. The company in England is called AC that made the little roadster. They have never stopped making it. They've run out of money and closed their doors for a while, but then they reopen right up and start making it again. But this is still the classic look that everybody who says, 60s Cobra, they know exactly what it is. And they have started making an electric one. The best joke that I can make about this that I've come up with, is it still an AC Cobra or is it now a DC Cobra?
We need to get sound beats, like having the crickets just hit right there, right?
No, that's the laugh. That's the canned laughter. That's the laugh track. If you watch Friends without the laugh track, they just all look like sociopaths.
That's true. Okay, so I love seeing this. And now they're only going to make 50, 60 of these things, right?
But they're hand-built cars. 50, 60 is a lot for those guys.
Oh, I know, but that's the thing is it makes it all the more cherished, all the more unique. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
Power, I mean, we're talking the battery size is probably like half the size of a Model S battery, but it's a lighter vehicle. It's not going to be like made for like the utmost crazy speed as much as for like pure torque and fun.
No, it's much more of like a Miata. Even the 0 to 60 time, the performance, the weight is going to be very similar to the Miata. Of course, the price is going to be the same too, except just $100,000 more.
Right, yeah, just a little bit more. But this is the kind of stuff that I like seeing. And again, there's been conversations about what's been happening in the UK. The royal family and their Jaguar collection is they actually have some electrics conversions.
Yes, they actually had Daimler, which was the coach builder, go back and redo them all with fairly state of the art. I think it was Jaguar sourced electrical stuff. And those are really hot cars. And I really love the idea and what some of the cottage industry people are doing with these, taking these older iconic designs, even if they're not an iconic design, a car or a motorcycle that was important to them, and they're electrifying it. That to me is really exciting because, I'm used to going to car shows and seeing 40, 50-year-old cars. So what's going to happen to the cars that I'm into now, 20, 30 years from now? How am I going to see those at car shows when gasoline may not be that easy to come by? We don't know, right? We don't know how it's going to play out.
Oh yeah, I think. Well, again, now you're talking to that bridging of the gap. We've got this like where muscle cars came from, what they got into in the 70s, 80s, even in the 90s, and where they've kind of transitioned to into the 21st century, which is kind of like, what are they for? What will they be?
Right.
And I think what you just described is probably where we're going to see a lot more fun happen. And again, this is the type of inspiration you need to see from it, is these fabled companies that have done some amazing things in motorsports to say, well, we're going to do this too, and we're going to be a part of this fun.
Yeah, and I think, go back to the idea of it being fun. When a company like this that kind of exists because they think it's cool, right? Like they don't think it's going to go huge. They never, nobody working at AC thinks they're going to be the next GM or Ford or Chrysler and sell 150,000 of these things. They know that even 58 or 60 of these things is a stretch. But they're doing it because they like it. They're doing it because they love it. And that's the true enthusiasm. And it kind of shows that you can be an enthusiast, you can love sports cars, and you're not married to the internal combustion engine.
Yeah, I mean, the 0 to 60 time is what they're claiming is going to be. It's in the ballpark of like 6 or 7 seconds, which is good, but it's not, again, going to be mind-bending. But it's still better than what the combustion versions were.
Dude, you're going to have a good time in it.
Yep.
You're just going to have a blast. And that's what the car is for. And that's how enthusiasm builds. When your car is for drag racing and you try to take it through a drive-through to buy French fries, it sucks. You're sitting there, you get the, then you're trying to inch forward. They can't hear you. You end up getting like the vanilla shake. Nobody wants your damn vanilla shake. Just give me the chocolate one. Don't even have vanilla as an option. But here we are.
Well, you just described, I went through In-N-Out. I was like, I haven't had this in so long. And then because of where we are in the world, like we couldn't go inside and eat. So we had to like pull around to the parking lot and just eat in the car. And so we did that all in, silence, and then just sat there and watched like Ace Ventura on Netflix inside of our car and ate In-N-Out. I was like, what happened? Like rewind even 10 years. This wasn't a conversation.
Yeah, it wasn't a possibility. And it's, I don't know, it's nice, but that was always our test. If we were trying to fine tune a package, like a hardware package for a Mercedes or a Porsche or something, the final test was, okay, it makes all the power on the dyno. It's good around the track. The last thing was the drive-through test. Could you take it through a drive-through without it ruining your day? To think that you can have a 9 or a 10-second family car that you can just start up in the morning and drive to work and plug in when you get home. We have come so far. Let's move on before I start liking the AC less because I really do like it. And
I think it's awesome. I'm glad they're doing it.
Yeah, as Jewel would say, I'm sensitive and I'd like to stay that way.
Wow, Jewel reference.
Yeah.
What up? My God. Well, okay. Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I'm like, who else can we bring up that was probably a controversial singer?
She wasn't controversial. She was lovely.
You're right. Actually, she was lovely.
So yeah, so let's move on into that. So the next thing that we want to talk about is the Hyundai fuel cell trucks. Now this is actually interesting because we've been talking about, Tesla's trucks and their semi truck. We've been talking about Nikola. We picked on them a little bit with the Honey Badger thing, which I think they earned that. Not quite as bad with Elon and his hair plugs, but still they had it coming.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you know it's real. So anyway, Hyundai has done something that Nikola hasn't done. They've done something that Tesla hasn't done. They've done something that Volvo hasn't done. And you know how I love those guys. They have actually gotten their hydrogen fuel cell trucks into the hands of customers. They delivered. They delivered.
That's what they did.
So now, is their stock going to go up $22 billion?
Yeah, let's see how the hype train treats this one, right? And that's the problem, is you have products from companies, even legacy brands like Hyundai, that are saying, well, no, we actually have this on the road now. And to your point, like how does the hype train treat that? And maybe it's because it's a legacy brand having to again change that DNA, whereas Nikola is a fresh start. Maybe there's some element to that for why people are believing more in one thing or another. But it doesn't change the fact that they have them on the road. And so it was 50 total semis, is that correct?
So it's 50, yeah. So they built them in Korea, they drove them onto the transport ship, and they're sending them over to Switzerland. And the reason they're targeting Europe, there are a lot of major cities in Europe that are not only banning diesels, they're not going to allow any kind of diesel vehicle within the city limits, but they're not going to allow a internal combustion vehicle within certain areas, like where they call it slow streets, like they do that here in Chicago, they call it a slow street. But and we're not talking about like weird towns, we're talking about London, like that's a major city. We're talking about Barcelona, Berlin, where you're not going to be able to conduct transport business and delivery business unless you have either an EV or a zero emission vehicle like a fuel cell EV. And for Hyundai to come out and actually produce this thing, build it, ship it, and deliver it, that is a huge, huge milestone. And, good for them. I didn't think it was going to be Hyundai.
What's funny too is I still struggle with how consumers and just average people are going to understand. Because again, at the end of the day, a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle is essentially electric. It has an onboard battery. It is using an electric motor. By use of the fuel cell, the only emission that you're basically creating is water. The benefit behind using hydrogen as a fuel is you basically have faster refueling time, which is similar to gasoline. Maybe 8, 10, 15 minutes tops for filling up. But are consumers going to understand it's electric in the same way that like an electric car is electric?
No. I am willing to bet. I don't even have to bet. I can tell you right now, I sat at the Chicago Auto Show. They were talking about hydrogen cars, and I saw a grown man speaking to a grown woman point to the car and say, "See that? Runs on hydrogen. That's a nuclear car." And I remembered it because he said nuclear correctly. And
that's
I was
fair.
I would have bet money on the next word out of his mouth being nuclear. But that's my point, is that even like enthusiasts who read magazines all the time, they have no idea. And I think that that's okay. I think it's okay for a consumer to say, I don't know. And to your point, where do I go for fuel? If Shell comes out tomorrow, or like we have, like the big ones here are BP and Shell, but if you go down south, you have Texaco, Haviland, all that. If you had a gas station company come out and say, hey, pump 5 is going to be hydrogen. Yeah. They would get that immediately. So someone would be standing in the showroom and go, oh, where do I, how do I fill this thing up? You tell them you just plug it into your wall. They're like, plug it into my wall? Weird. Like a toaster? I don't know. That's a fight. You just say, hey, where do you go get gas now? BP. Cool. Right across the street's a Shell station. Go there. They have hydrogen. Oh, cool.
Well, this gets into the fuel visibility. And how do they understand how to use it? And so this is where the hard part does come into play for hydrogen, is that the infrastructure is not there. My only hang up with hydrogen fuel is how do you make the fuel? Creating liquid hydrogen requires electrolysis on a massive scale. So how are you creating electricity to have the electrolysis process?
Oh, fossil fuels, nuclear.
Right. No, and that's
nuclear energy, boy.
Nuclear. Well, and that's where I think that the use case.
I was president, and I'd still have him back.
I was gonna. That's a totally different podcast. My point or thought, whatever you want to call it, about hydrogen fuel, and this is where the consumer education part comes in. I think hydrogen is the great use case for hydrogen is trucking. I do think that it is very effective and helpful there. That's why I think Nikola as a hydrogen fuel cell semi truck. There's an argument there to make it work, make it make sense. But in light duty vehicle, I think there's still a better argument to point to the fact that you can own your fuel. Is that you don't have to go find your fuel anymore if you have an electric car. Whereas if you drive a hydrogen car or if you drive a gasoline car, you are still beholden to going and getting your fuel from someone and some other company. Whereas if you drive an electric car, you literally can get to a place where you can go, I have this at home, I fill up at home, and I now make my own fuel at home with solar or something. And you can genuinely get to a place where you're not having to rely on something outside of you for it. And I think that's the biggest bonus that comes with having a pure electric. Whereas hydrogen, again, fast fill up time, no doubt, but the infrastructure is going to be tough for light duty vehicle. But I think what Hyundai's proving and showing, and what Nikola I think can prove and show, is that for medium and heavy duty trucking, this is going to be something that will be valuable. I'm just still kind of like on that fence about how do you make that new fuel. And as you said, it's like shifting the emissions, like shifting the fossil fuel emissions.
Yeah, so that's been the story of energy and power generation for the last 100 years. Is when you had kerosene lamps in your home and we suddenly went to electricity, it wasn't the poor guys getting, it wasn't the peasants getting electricity first, was it?
Yeah,
no, it was the rich guys. So that's what it always is, and for better or for worse.
Kudos to Hyundai for delivering.
I think we're good. I think we got a show on this one for this week.
Hold on. You need to give me an out. Just give me a quick hey, thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week.
That was it. When I said, okay, I think we've got a show.
No, that you keep doing that. Give me an actual give me something a little more than that. Come on.
Anytime.
I don't know what to say. I'm not trying to be a jackass.
That's our show. Thanks for tuning in this week.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's fair. I think we've got a show there. So everybody who listened, thanks for tuning in, obviously, at this point. And next week, we're going to talk about something else.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Electrify Podcast. Be sure to find out more information about Electrify Expo on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn to get information on all things e-mobility. We'll see you next week.